Right, we're into wiring and plumbing territory, starting with this stuff down here. We're going to get the inverter cleaned up, make sure there's no bits of metal in it, and change the amp seal connector for a straight one for the 180-degree one that I had on beforehand. This obviously is my Gen 3 Prius inverter. So I'll need to go around, take out all the screws, well, take off the amp seal first, take out all the screws to separate the two halves, take the screws out for the connections underneath, well, actually take the ones out around the side, take the cover off. I'm going to blow it out with the air gun, which you may be able to hear hissing in the background. Just make sure that's all clean, and then replace this with another 3D printed part. And what I have here is my collection of parts that I've 3D printed for EV stuff, but either were good enough to use but I haven't used, or were close and they're sort of the latest prototype. They're all a bit mixed up. So I've got a variety of different amp seal covers. This one's got a nice rubber seal on it, so I might use that one. I've got a straight one as well, which comes in a couple of parts. Got bases of boxes and covers. This was an idea for using these giant Siemens fuses for quick disconnectors. This would be completely sealed in. You'd just be able to get your hands in there, not touch anything, and pull this thing out. But I have a strong suspicion that I might actually pull the 3D printer apart unless I printed it completely solid. So I never quite went with that idea. Multiple variations on my high voltage connectors. Had some, as you can see, with screw-in grommets, and the shroud fits in there nicely to make it all nice and neat and tidy. May end up using those at some point. Those were kind of cool. I designed things like that for the back of the Prius. I've got multiple high voltage connection options for the back of the Prius inverter for the DC input, and a load of other just, you know, multi-part boxes that are good enough to be used for something. That's a case for the Johannes's brake sensor. So yeah, lots of bits that I thought I'd hang on to because they might be useful at some point, and sure enough, that one's going to come in useful now. So get the impact gun set up and get all these screws whipped out and get this thing taken apart. Now, of course, things are never as simple as you want them to be, especially when you forget things you've already done, and particularly modifications. I've actually done a couple of mods here to pull 12 volts from the input through a buck converter that's hiding behind this IDC connector here. Pull that out, which provides 3 volts or 3v3 to this Wi-Fi module here. I wasn't getting a great Wi-Fi signal out of the case, so I decided to mount the Wi-Fi module externally, which means that our existing 3D printed amp seal won't fit. Options. Stick it on for now and just tuck the wiring in here somewhere. Print something new, which is probably the best option. Or find another way to route those cables out and print something new that sits elsewhere. It'd be quite cool to have something just sat up on top of the inverter here, maybe. I shall have a think. This, of course, is where I remember that last time I did this, I think I sealed the two halves together with RTV. So it's not just going to pull apart. Especially since I missed a screw. that I couldn't get to while the amp seal was in place. There we go. So there we go, that's now nice and clean. Didn't actually see any bits of metal coming out. Did see some bits of leaves. Obviously I did most of the work on this on my driveway before I had this place. This thing hasn't been apart inside the garage. And there were some moments where I had to do some in the garage work. So what you can see in here is the EV BMW Damien Maguire Prius Gen 3 board. I think this is my third one, I think, possibly my fourth. Entirely down to user error, nothing to do with Damien's quality of work. And hello, birds on the roof. Variously slightly modified Prius inverter. Got the MG1 and MG2 bridged around here with some. If I can bring you around actually so you can see that. I know it doesn't look very pretty, but it is safe, trust me, with some very chunky copper wires bridging. So they're the same cross section as the internal bus bars. And so I can't remember what AWG that is, but all nicely wrapped up in their heat shrinked and then wrapped in tape as well, just, you know, for extra safety. And yeah, so that can now go back together. I didn't come to a conclusion about what to do with this yet, other than to think, hello, pulling it out the wrong way. I didn't come to a conclusion beyond, we still want the external Wi-Fi. We don't have a 3D printed piece with a gap for it at the moment. So we'll just sort of tuck it inside for now, just maybe cover any loose bits and tuck it inside for now, and then we'll worry about that another day. Slight change of plans. I remembered why I didn't use this one before. It leaves no room for the backing plate here outside of the case. And this backing plate is too big to go through this gap. And so that's why I came up with this one, where the backing plate goes through there, like that, and the front plate goes over the top, one way or another. Yeah, it's like that. It's a very tight fit. And they seal to each other, and that puts it all on the outside. Makes it nice and easy to mount, and all you've got inside is your cable and your IDC connector. It still doesn't leave any room for our Wi-Fi module and a buck converter, so I'm just going to attach that loosely for now and leave those outside if I can work out a way to do it. And then we'll 3D. Then we only have to. We can keep the back plate, maybe with some tweaks, maybe the hole drilled in it or reamed out a little bit, and print a new front plate, which has got maybe an extension up here, or maybe a gap out here for this cable to come out, and a piece that is attached or glues on that holds these. But it'll do for now. Next step then, get our heater bolted in, since that goes at the back, and we're going to have to sort the piping for that out before we do anything else. Unfortunately, I say it's accessible. I'll need to sort out the low voltage wiring at some point, and I don't have. I've got the plug for that. I haven't wired it up yet, so I should be able to get in underneath, potentially get a plug on there, or actually might not be a bad idea to invert that so I can get to it from the top. I should be able to get to that actually. I'll leave that where it is. So let's get that bolted in, and then we can start to think about plumbing it. There we go. Heater installed, and some maybe permanent piping. So we've obviously still got to add a header tank. We've got to have some way to fill this all up. And I'm not totally happy about having a 90 degrees in just after the pump. And these pumps I know are meant to be horizontal. You're meant to have the inlet horizontal ideally, but I found they work absolutely fine in that orientation. And it's not like it's ever going to be short of water, given that this thing's always going to be full because it's down low and the header tank's going to be up high. So it shouldn't run dry at any point. It's not like it's having to lift, pull in a huge head from below. So I think that should be okay, and it should get around that 90 okay. I don't think that'll cause too much obstruction. So obviously need to wire this, so our 12 volt control will come off here and run probably up. I might keep this actually. I was thinking about taking this cable channel off, but I might keep that cable channel run up here into this cable channel and into all the electronics gubbins up there. Need a mounting bracket as well. I mean, it's pretty solid, to be honest. It's not going to go anywhere, but just a bracket that comes in onto that rubber mounting point and ties into this angle here. Could even just actually sit something, go onto that one bolt hole there underneath the inverter with just a thin piece of sheet or something that just comes off at a right angle and ties into that bolt hole. It's only got one hole to mount it anyway, but it'd be fine for now. And yeah, something else I was going to say and I've forgotten what it was. Oh yes, cable ties. I've experimented with, as you can see over here, every variety of Jubilee, clamp, clip under the sun. These are the ones that I've harvested from the Outlander stuff. And actually on plastic connections, so these elbows and on the plastic barbs of the pump, I found that by and large Jubilee clamps, I found that cable ties work absolutely fine. I just cinch them up with the pliers, cut them off with the edge cutters, and Bob's your uncle. A lot less painful than cheap Jubilee clamps, which shred themselves and might crunch the plastic. You get a perfectly good seal like this. So yeah, something I've learned at least in the process of doing all this. And that's that really. Yep, that's the tropical rain of Manchester that I can barely hear myself over in the background. Next up then, high voltage wiring for the motor. Just taking the bolts out there. We've got 3 connections that come out. So we get this access to our screws, comes out this way. Someone, I think Tom Debris maybe, designed a shroud to go over your cables to come out there. So we'll get our 3 35mm squared cables slotted through there. We'll reuse the ones that we were using before. We'll slot them through there, put our 6mm hole, what are they called? The metal boots, you know what I mean. Anyway, stick those on there, get those screwed in, get this top screwed on and this shroud screwed on, and then we'll run the cables up, we'll drop our inverter in, and then once the cables are attached, we can once the inverter's in, we can work out exact length of the cables, trim those down, and crimp on some new connectors. There we go, our 3 phase lines in, our shroud on. Nice to have another 3D printed part in here. So next up, pop our lid on, screw that down, and then drop our inverter in, run these lines around the top with some shroud on, and cut them to length. There we go, inverter in. I don't have any nice hardware for mounting at the moment, so I've just got these M8 screws in there at the front, and then one of these nice BMW M6 screws at the back. Obviously the front and back have been reversed. I've turned it round from the orientation it was for, so I'll have to put a new high voltage sticker on because it looks a bit weird the wrong way around. But it's much better this way around because now we've got easy access to the awkward bit, which is the DC input which comes in here, and also easy access to the much easier bit, which is the phase connections which come in here. And so we've got our 3D printed cowls on the outside. We just need to trim these cables down. I've got them in order, 1, 2, 3. I'll shroud them up with labels on, just so that you can rearrange them if you need to. I think it's unlikely, but if you do need to swap them around, change the order, then it's, at least you know what's what. So I think probably trim it about there, and put some great big crimp connectors on. Hold that thought. Just realised I don't have any of the right size heat shrink for this, so I'll have to order some before I put the crimps on. Crimps are all here, my big box of crimp connectors. It'll be some of these 35 6s, and that will all be done with, if I can find it, hydraulic pumping tool. So I borrowed one of these off Alfred for a while, thank you Alfred, but decided to get my own in the end because I'm going to be doing this sort of stuff for a while, and they're not that expensive. Even comes with this bunch of spare seals should it blow, which is nice. So I may not film this when I actually do it. It'll just be diving in for a quick job to get that done once I've got the heat shrink. While I pause the high voltage wiring, might as well get on with the plumbing while I've got some time. So starting with this run that goes from the inverter down to the motor, I've put one of the OEM clips back on at the bottom for that nice OEM look. You may remember from previous episode we found that this pipe, I can't remember where it came from, it was pretty much a perfect fit for that link between those two parts. So we'll save the other matching OEM clip to go on there for that nice fresh look, and stick another slightly different coloured but basically very similar OEM clip on here. Tip I've just worked out myself, mole grips, clamp the thing, it stays open, and then you can just, and I won't be able to do this, slot it over the, I should have put this on a tripod first, slot it over there, slot the thing on, you get the idea, and release. Certainly made my life a bit easier. Next piece of plumbing in, that's the other motor connection on. Again, one we tested out a few episodes ago. Again, I've used the OEM clamp. It runs up over the steering shaft, whatever. Just like saying shaft really. And into this pipe here, which drops down underneath alongside the battery box underneath here. When the battery box is finally mounted, we can cable tie that onto the side there, stop it bouncing around and chafing, and then there's plenty of length there. Comes out the end, whatever we end up doing with the valance out the front here. So now we can start working on the other side and come back from the inverter into the charger. And that might be the last thing we do today. So close, yet so far. I have of course run out of 19mm or 3/4 inch rubber hose. So I tried to make this piece with a piece of 16mm, and without, even with heat and everything else, I cannot get it over the barb of the Bosch PCE pump. So I'm going to have to order some more 19mm, which kind of makes sense because most of the rest of the cooling loop is 19mm. I bought the 16mm because some of the fittings, I think, on the radiator is 16mm. So I'll need like to do 16 to 19mm adapters, which is quite straightforward because these elbows, with a bit of heat, it's very easy to get the 16mm over the 19mm elbow. And there's going to be a couple of elbows around here as we go into the radiator. But at least we've got a template for our part now. We know what needs to go in there. Still some debate about whether this is the right location for the pump. You know, remember the lowest point is going to be the radiator down here. It's going to come up from the radiator into our charger, through our charger into our pump. Pump's going to push it through the inverter and the motor, and then out of the motor and back into our radiator again. And again, we'll put a T-piece in. Oh, that's an interesting point actually. Oh no, we still need, yeah, we might be able to use the T-piece to fit, to use this piece of 16mm, put a T-piece in here to go into our reservoir, which is obviously going to go there. Let's grab that down off the shelf actually, all the way up here. So our reservoir is going to go there. Oh, hello. Never noticed that before. Huh. May need to do a bit of minor surgery on our charger. Not the end of the world, given that that's a completely redundant piece. But to fit our reservoir in. But yeah, reservoir there. Need to find the barb that screws on there. No idea what has happened to that. But yeah, reservoir straight into T-piece. Weirdly, that's actually going to be lower than that pipe if we do that there. Huh. Maybe we have to go rotate that around and go down. Okay. Some thinking to be done there. May have to use this as the reservoir for our heater loop because it'll be nice and above it, and put a separate reservoir in for our cooling loop a bit higher up. Use that metal plate which has already got some captive nuts in it to mount a new reservoir over there for our cooling loop. That's a bit awkward. Not quite sure how that didn't come up in my various experiments. Anyway, it's not a major issue. I'm not too worried about that. Progress. So that's it for today. Quick summary because I've got a dash. Yeah, got a bit done. I wasn't here for as long as I expected to be today, but made some progress. Got some plumbing done. Got the heater in. Got some high voltage wires in. Next steps, finish up that plumbing, order some parts. Oh, you may have noticed, by the way, this thing here and this thing here. I've got new power steering hoses on order from Hydraulic Warehouse. Very good customer service from them. I noticed an error in their online calculator. And they fixed it straight away and emailed me a quote at the same time. So continue to recommend them even though they're not paying me. Yeah, so next time, finish up some of that high voltage wiring. I'll get some heat shrink ordered. I'll get some 3/4 inch / 19mm hose ordered. I'll probably get a second reservoir ordered. And that kind of makes sense. We can keep our heating and our cooling separate. You don't want to fault in one to screw up the other. And yeah, probably finish up the high voltage wiring and the plumbing before moving on to the low voltage wiring. Get everything in its location, and then we can worry about where all our 12 volts go, which will mean some adaptations to, oh, can't lift it with one hand, this, to mount our nice shiny new alloy radiator, aluminium radiator. It will be an aluminium alloy. Yeah, that's it. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed that, and I'll see you next time. Cheers, bye bye.